the Atlantic Ocean. A place of impossible beauty and cold, indifferent terror. Imagine waking up to the sound of thunder, not from the sky but from beneath your feet. The clock reads 1 a.m. on a moonless night, and you are 1,800 miles from the nearest land. You realize with sickening certainty that the sound is your own boat shattering. This is the moment Steven Callahan's life changed forever. A naval architect, a seasoned sailor, a man who had built his own 21-foot sloop, the Napoleon Solo, was now facing the ultimate existential terror. He wasn't just losing his boat, he was losing his entire world, swallowed by the largest wilderness on Earth. For the next 76 days, his universe would shrink to a 6-foot, waterlogged rubber bubble, forcing him to evolve from a sophisticated seaman into an aquatic caveman. This is the true story of isolation, ingenuity, and the sheer brutal will to survive. The journey had begun with a dream, a solo transatlantic crossing from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean. 7 days out, the weather had turned into a relentless, churning tempest. Steven was in his bunk, exhausted, when the collision occurred. It wasn't a slow scraping sound. It was a deafening metallic crack. Steven sprang up. Water was already thundering into the cabin. A dark, immense object, likely a whale or a large shark, had punched a gaping, catastrophic hole in the hull of Napoleon Solo. He knew instantly he couldn't save the boat. He had mere minutes. His actions became a frantic, desperate ballet of survival. He raced through the rising water, his mind screaming a checklist. He inflated the Avon Life raft and deployed it. It was a bright orange, round, 6-foot inflatable, a clown car on a savage ocean. Tying the raft to the sinking sloop, he plunged back into the cabin several times, diving below the dark, surging waterline to salvage whatever he could. A piece of cushion and a sleeping bag.an emergency kit. Flares, a torch, and 3 precious solar stills for making drinking water. A short spear gun. A navigation chart and a copy of a survival manual. He managed to get aboard the raft just as a colossal wave tore it free of the sinking hull. He watched in horror as his beautiful self-made boat, Napoleon Solo, the culmination of years of work and dreams, gave its final guttural sigh and plunged into the abyss. Steven was now utterly alone. The date was January 29, 1982. The first 48 hours were a battle against the elements and against his own mind. He was drenched, shivering, and surrounded by mountainous waves. The raft's canopy offered slight protection but made the tiny space suffocatingly hot during the day. The immediate reality was crushing. He had enough canned food, nuts, raisins, baked beans, a can of meat, for perhaps 7 days. And for water? A pitiful 8 ounces plus the 3 solar stills. He entered what he later called a state of recoil. The initial adrenaline rush of saving his life had vanished, replaced by an unbearable, hollow despair. He started a daily log, a vital ritual that would anchor him to reality. He even wrote his own epitaph on scraps of paper, convinced he was going to die. On day 8 he spotted his first hope, a ship on the horizon. It was a freighter, a dark smudge against the vast, blue canvas. He fired a flare, a streak of brilliant, fiery red against the gray sky, but the distance was too great. The ship sailed right on by, the crew entirely oblivious to the tiny bubble of human suffering floating in their wake. He spotted 9 ships in total during his ordeal, most in the 2 sea lanes he crossed, but every single one of them failed to see him. The lesson was immediate and brutal. He could not rely on rescue. He had to rely on himself. The shift in mindset was the key to his survival. Steven stopped waiting for a rescue that wasn't coming and began the painstaking work of building a miniature civilization within his 6-foot bubble. His most critical project was the water supply. The 3 solar stills were his lifeblood, but they were temperamental, taking days to get working properly and producing a meager amount, just over a pint a day. This meant rationing was severe. He learned to manage the stills with the meticulous care of a mad scientist, optimizing them for every degree of sunlight. The raft, drifting westward with the south equatorial current and the trade winds, began to attract life. He had drifted into tropical waters. A delicate, mobile ecosystem formed around his rubber home. The main residents were mahi-mahi, also known as dorado, majestic, vibrant fish. Steven was forced to become a hunter. He used the short spear gun he had salvaged, aiming for the fish that swam beneath the raft. The mahi-mahi were fast, but Steven learned their patterns. When he landed a fish, it was a moment of profound, conflicted triumph. He loved these creatures, noting their beauty and abundance, yet he had to kill them for his life. He ate them raw, his primary source of sustenance, that he also caught and ate triggerfish, barnacles that grew on the raft's hull, and the occasional flying fish that landed on the raft's canopy. He was no longer a sailor. He was a pure predator, a castaway living on the razor's edge of the food chain. He kept a strict schedule, navigating with a homemade sextant of pencils, prioritizing repairs, fishing, and exercising. Routine was his most powerful weapon against the psychological horror of isolation. Just over a month into the drift, the mental and physical toll began to show its true cost. Steven was losing weight at a rapid pace. He would eventually lose a third of his body mass. His skin, constantly wet and rubbed by the rubber and salt, developed severe scores of saltwater sores that covered his body, making every movement agony. And then the ocean struck back. Around day 43, the unimaginable happened. His raft was punctured. A large hole appeared in the floor, possibly from a shark bite or damage from the constant abrasion against debris. This was the crisis point. A raft without air is merely a piece of rubber. It took Steven 10 agonizing days to effect a repair. He had to use the limited waterlogged repair patches he had, constantly bailing water, fighting the internal despair that this was finally the end. He had to battle the waves, the salt, and the ever-present threat of sharks, dark, silent shadows that circled his fragile sanctuary. He eventually succeeded, sealing the massive tear. His resourcefulness had won this round, but the victory was exhausting. He was weaker, thinner, and the isolation was pressing down on him, turning the nights into a blend of surreal beauty and abject terror. He described the night sky at one point as a view of heaven from a seat in hell. The weeks blurred into a single, endless cycle of hunting, distilling water, and patching minor holes. The solar stills were working, the fishing was successful, but his body was failing. He had now drifted nearly 1,800 nautical miles. He was in the region of the Lesser Antilles, but he didn't know how close he was to land. On the eve of April 20, 1982, his 75th night adrift, Steven was staring into the darkness when his routine was shattered. On the horizon, a faint, undeniable glow. Not the fleeting lights of a passing freighter, but the steady, fixed lights of an island. Marie Galante, a small island southeast of Guadeloupe. He had made it. The ocean's current had delivered him to the doorstep of civilization. The next morning, his 76th day on the raft, he was close to the shore. A small fishing vessel approached, drawn not just by the sight of the raft, but by the circle of seabirds hovering above it, birds attracted to the ecosystem of fish and barnacles that had sustained Steven for nearly 3 months. Steven Callahan was hauled from the life raft. His journey was over. He was physically devastated, a man who had lost a third of his being, but mentally unbroken. He had survived by the book, but more importantly, he had survived by writing a new one with his own tenacity, grit, and the extraordinary human capacity for hope. Steven Callahan's 76 days lost at sea wasn't just a physical struggle. It was a profound spiritual journey that changed him forever. He didn't come away bitter at the sea. He came away enlightened. He proved that survival isn't just about having the right gear. It's about the mindset. It's about accepting that you are alone and then, immediately, getting to work. It's about prioritizing problems, keeping a routine, and never, ever letting despair be the final answer. His story serves as a timeless lesson in human resilience and ingenuity. Like Steven Callahan, we all face our own adrift moments, whether physical or metaphorical, and his journey shows us the power we find within ourselves when everything else is gone. If this story of sheer human grit inspired you, please smash the like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of what they're capable of, and subscribe to our channel for more true stories of survival and endurance.